Hi,
Louie,
welcome in. Well, go ahead.
welcome to the Horse Racing Happy Hour 2024 edition.
Producer Zach out here doing work. I'm Louie Rabeau. Thanks for hanging out. You can find me on Twitter at racing. We're going to start over. Hi, I'm Louie Rabeau. You can find me at Radio Louie. And you can find the show at Horse Happy Hour on Twitter if you haven't found us there yet. If you're watching us on Twitter, thanks for joining in. I'm here to talk to you about my Eclipse votes tonight, and I'm also here to look at what I'm calling 3 Derby preps, even though only one of them actually has Derby points attached to it. I will explain my thought process as to why I actually think that there are 3 Derby preps. On Saturday, Zach, how are you? How was the new year? How was the trip back to Austin from Maryland?
It was interesting. So we did the thing that you can do in an RV, which is why I love the RV. We were like, you know what? We're done with this Maryland thing. We're going to turn around and go home, and we're just going to truck it, right? No big deal. So about midway through day 1 of 2 days of trucking it, my wife accidentally butt dials my mother, who's staying at our house.
Sure.
And they talk for a second, and my mother's like, "Oh, you all are on the road. Are you headed to Hershey Park, which is a theme park?" We're like, "No, we're headed home." And she's like, "Oh, well, I have friends staying here till Thursday." So this is Sunday. So we had the choice of either telling her to leave, like, "Nope, sorry, we're going to be home. Your friends have to go," or finding other things to do. So we visited Biltmore, which is the Vanderbilt mansion out there in North Carolina. And then we did the Hot Springs experience in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So we went to all the bathhouses there to check out the history, and we hiked across the mountain where the hot springs are.
What you and your family do in bathhouses is your family's business. Okay, thank you very much. I'm not. This is a family show. Please keep the bathhouse talk to yourself. All right. We had a good Christmas over here too, and again, well, Christmas. I've done 3 shows since Christmas or whatever. But yes, we had a good New Year. So how's that? Thanks to all of our guests, most recently, John Piasek, of course, the Maryland Thoroughbred Breeders, Dan Illman from the DRF, and Steve Kornacki from NBC, all jumping on and doing shows with us. Between Christmas and New Year's, during the busiest part of the year, as we got our Road to the Preakness series going again this year. And of course, we had Kornacki on to talk about his Eclipse ballot. He and I have done exactly the same number, as in we've turned in 2. And so let's talk about that. Because, lots of people right now, this time of year, they do the thing where they put their Eclipse votes out on Twitter and let you kind of comment on it and all those sorts of things. And it's been interesting because I know last year when I did mine, I had a couple of opinions that were pretty different from most people. I think this year we have a big question, Zach, in the Cody's Wish story was really incredible, and it was really it moved a lot of people. There's no other way to say it. It moved a lot of people, and I'm leaving all my own personal feelings and all that out of it. I'm wondering how many people are going to vote for that horse based on sentimentality rather than based on what he actually did on the dirt at the different tracks where he was. We will find out on Saturday if he's a finalist, for example, for Horse of the Year. My sense is that he isn't at the top of my Horse of the Year ballot for all the track races, but I think for horse racing, almost certainly he would be on the top of that list. But let's go straight to the categories that I know everyone pays attention to the most. We'll go to 3-year-old male here. In another year where there wasn't an obvious, because of the Triple Crown sort of horse, right? There wasn't one that won 2 of the races or, won a bunch of preps and then came in and dominated the Derby or anything like that. Of course, we had 3 different winners of the Triple Crown races, but we did have one back-to-back winner in 2 of the major dirt races going 2 turns in this country. That was Arcangelo. He wins the Belmont. Then he comes back and he wins the Traverse. So he got my vote for first place in the 3-year-old division. I don't think that's surprising to anybody, but that's where I ended up going. There, I did give Forte the nod for second spot. I know that lots of people just remember him not running in the Derby and therefore being disqualified from running in the Preakness, running in the Belmont in second place. But I think people forget he ran in the Jim Dandy, won that in the slop. He was the Florida Derby winner, if people remember that. Of course, before that, the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth as well. Won 2 Grade 1s, was up the track a little bit in the Traverse behind Arcangelo. So when they went head-to-head and in the biggest race of Saratoga's season, he wasn't good enough. And so I put him second. And then in the third spot, I had a Ghost Rodin, and this was more just I didn't love any of the other horses in that 3-year-old group, and I think best race run on American soil by a 3-year-old this year was a Ghost Rodin in the Breeders' Cup. He won the Breeders' Cup turf as a 3-year-old in that incredibly important Irish breeding line that we talked about with James Welsh leading into the Breeders' Cup, and so I put him third because I thought he was a worthy spot. It was worthy at least of a vote, even if it was just for one race in North America. That's where I think I'll be especially different than other people on the 3-year-old ballot. I think otherwise, nothing that I've said just now stands out as a crazy sort of vote. Let's go to 3-year-old filly. And on this one, I thought there were a couple of different ways to go. Unfortunately, I think a horse that could have pressed for 3-year-old filly was Maple Leaf Mel. And of course, unfortunately,
oh my gosh, yeah. Yep.
And so we didn't get to see her all the way into the fall. I wonder if she would have been a contender, say, when we got to the Filly Mare at the Breeders' Cup, if she would have been part of that conversation. But unfortunately, she was not. And frankly, she wasn't even in our materials because she's not a Grade 1 winner technically in the United States. And so I think Pretty Mischievous sort of by default, all of her early season successes obviously comes out of the fairgrounds. In that Fairgrounds Oaks runs second. They give her the time off, and she ends up running and winning the Kentucky Oaks, the Acorn, and the Test all in a row. And obviously, that Test was marred by the Maple Leaf Mel injury, but she did come back in the sloppiest cotillion in history and run second in that one to Ceiling Crusher. But I think just before that, the fact that she won all those Grade 1s, especially against other 3-year-old fillies, for me was good enough in that 3-race run, that three-race stretch, if you will. To jump into that. I had surge capacity in the second spot here amongst 3-year-old fillies. Ran obviously in the Matriarch at Del Mar, winning by a head against older horses. And I love that. So she wins the Grade 1 against older horses out west in a full field of 12 at Del Mar in December. Before that, of course, winning in several graded stakes at lower levels. But I love that surge capacity stepped up, beat the fillies and mares of older ranks in that race out west. Chad Brown shipping her out to San Diego for that one. So love that effort from her. And then my third spot there, I gave it to Maj. And I think Maj actually kind of had a weird underrated year and was about a neck from having one of the great 3-year-old seasons. And really, I think maybe being 3-year-old of the year, had she been able to pull out the Breeders' Cup Mile against not only older horses, but against the boys too. She had a huge race under Oyster Murphy. Really wonder if she had won that race, what we'd be talking about with her. But she got my third place vote amongst the 3-year-old filly candidates. I don't think anything there is very especially different or what have you. This is where I think I'm different. Older dirt male. And this is where I think just overall body of work the entire year that for me, Elite Power was the best older dirt male. Now, I know that in general Eclipse voting, there's a major lean toward people voting for 2-turn dirt horses in this case. I thought Elite Power was the best sprinter the entire year. His one slip up was in the forego. It was behind Gunite, who all of us think, was a terrific sprinter. Elite Power came back, beat him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint with no effort at all. So I put him on top. I do have Cody's Wish in the second spot on this category. Another guy that was not much of a 2-turn horse, but I do think his races stand out as well. 400 buyer speed figures, and of course, his only loss was in the Whitney, trying to go 2 turns behind White Abario, who I have third, and that's because White Abario ran 2 good races. Did he win 2 really, really important races in the Whitney and in the Breeders' Cup Classic? He did. He absolutely did. But I don't know, the whole body work for the entire year. I'm less moved by White Abario than other people, which is funny because I was the one who had White Abario season as a hashtag on this show. And so for me to have him in third, I think is probably a little surprising to some people who follow this show. But for me, just overall, he runs in the Met. He's behind Cody's Wish. So there, to me, puts him one spot behind Cody's Wish in the one matchup that they had. They did stretch him back out in the Dutro barn there. And I think did right by the horse toward the end of the year. And he'll get my third place vote there for older dirt male. And then we get on to a horse that I think has absolute ability to win Horse of the Year, and her name is Idiomatic. So Idiomatic got my first place vote for older dirt female, even though this year she won on all 3 surfaces, which is pretty incredible. Actually, I think this year, it was just at Turfway on the synthetic. And then, of course, she flipped over to the dirt. And after she did, all she did was win the Shawnee, the Delta, the Delaware handicap, excuse me. Then she ran in the personal lens, and the Spinster, of course, finished it off by edging out and winning the Breeders' Cup Distaff over Randomized, who I thought had a really nice year as well. And so, yeah, give me Idiomatic on top for older dirt female. I also love that she ran a huge number of races this year, 9 times, won 8 of them, won second place. Like I said, switching surfaces there. Very impressive to me. I thought that she was easily the best older dirt female this year. I did have Good Night Olive in the second spot. Apparently, I love sprinters. I had no idea until I did this balloting. Won that Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint, another one of those back-to-backers for that. So I gave her the second spot here. Thought she had a really nice year for trainer Chad Brown, who we'll talk about later when we get to trainers. And I put her in that spot for older dirt female. And second, I have Echo Zulu third, a very incomplete grade for her this year. I think had she run in the Breeders' Cup, she probably would have won. And I think we'd be talking about Echo Zulu on the same level as an Idiomatic. I think I would probably still lean Idiomatic, even if she had run a little bit more in the fall. That is Echo Zulu, because of the body of work, because of having run 9 times, getting those 8 wins. But Echo Zulu just ran in the very best company the whole time, Churchill Downs and then at Saratoga, wins at Dry Go, wins over Wet Go, etc. To me, really, really good season, gets my third place vote. There as well, we'll move to the male sprinter, and then we'll get to Horse of the Year. I guess we'll do 2-year-olds after that. I'm gonna skip the sprinters. Look at that. I'm pulling an audible here, Zach. I'm going to get into the 2-year-olds. And I thought this was an interesting year. This is where I think I got it pretty wrong last year. And so I wanted to make sure that I spent time making sure that I did this the right way. On the male side, I did the cop-out. And that was I put Fierceness in the first spot. He wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And frankly, the way that he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile is why I voted for him in the top spot as 2-year-old male. In this case, I have Locked in second place here. Obviously, Locked is the Todd Pletcher trainee. Ran third in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but did run the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland before. And then before that, of course, broke his maiden at Saratoga. Just a really good year running third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, puts him into very, very good company as well. And after Locked, I had Muth, who's actually running. We'll talk about him for a run on Saturday. Ran second in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Won the American Pharaoh before that at Del Mar, and the Best Pal he ran second in before that out there on the West Coast. I do think that second place finish puts him in a good spot. I think that this Saturday he has a chance to really show that he's the best horse in Southern California that's just turned 3. And I think there's a real possibility that he'll do that on Saturday. Now, here's where I think there is a chance on the 2-year-old side that I am a little bit different. Because I have a grass horse on top for a 2-year-old filly. And her name is Hard to Justify. She was 3 for 3 this year, broke her maiden in Saratoga, then went down to Aqueduct, won the Miss Grillo, and then shipped out west and won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly Turf. All those under Flavian Pratt, all those for trainer Chad Brown. I just thought she had a really, really terrific year. And I think we have this bias against turf horses for some reason, but I love the fact that she ran 3 times, won all 3 of those races. I think that she's absolutely one to watch as she grows, and being in the Chad Brown barn and being able to mature with him, I think will only be a major positive. I do have Just FYI in the second spot. She obviously won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies race on the girl side by a neck over Jody's Pride. There's another horse that's actually listed in here as well, winner of the Matron. And after that, I had Life Talk. In the third spot, another Pletcher trainee. Bill Mott trains Just FYI. We'll talk about Bill Mott later on today as well in this episode. But yeah, just an underrated year, by the way, for Life Talk. Won twice, hit the board in every race except for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And she ran 4th in that race by 3.5 legs. Came back, ran in the demos up after that, shipped back to New York and won that race. Love that they shipped her back. Love that she was ready to go. And so I'll put Just FYI in the third spot there amongst the 2-year-olds. Now, Horse of the Year before we get to the humans. I did put Idiomatic on top. And I think that the 9 runs, the 8 wins, I put White Abario second in a horse that we didn't talk about, but I had as my male turf horse of the year was Up to the Mark. And I think Up to the Mark was a neck from beating Auguste Rodin in the Breeders' Cup and from having probably horse of the year type year for Up to the Mark. And so I have him third. If you wanted to talk to me about moving up to the mark, further up in the standings, man, I'm here for it. I absolutely think He had a fantastic year. And I think any of those three could be horse of the year, and I wouldn't even blink an eye. I do wonder, though, like I said, I don't have Cody's Wish in my top three. I do wonder how many people who vote on this will go the sentimental route rather than the on-the-track route and vote for Cody's Wish. We shall
75%.
I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't know.
I'm betting the vast majority of people do that because at the end of the day,
I get it. I do. I get it.
People want to be on the side of history, and Cody's Wish is an awesome story.
Sure.
And you can say, I voted for Cody's Wish. Yeah.
It's not this, but I'm going to make a comparison. It's almost like a Lifetime Achievement Award, right? Where
exactly.
You give the MVP to somebody who might not have been the MVP that year. But, they've had a pretty good career, that kind of thing, and that's what Cody's Wish. We get here. Let's get to the people side of this thing. I did vote for Noah and the Arc for Steeplechase Horse, in case anybody was wondering. I do vote on the steeplechases. I do go back and watch those races and try to get an idea of who my favorites are. Let's get to the owners. I have Godolphin on top. I gave a shout to Bruco Schickendons as my second owner here. And if you're wondering who Bruno is, Bruno had I have him because he has the most wins in North America. He also had the most starters with over 1,100, and his horses won 173 races this year. So I just thought it was cool that there's a guy who's out there, just owns a bunch of horses, is running them all over. I looked him up on Equibase to get more of a sense of what his operation looks like. That guy's everywhere. And so shout out to Bruno. Great year for them. Gave him the second spot. With Juddmonte in the third spot there on the ownership side. Juddmonte had a really, really good year for earnings, and I thought a really good record in graded stakes as well. On the breeder side, I did go with Godolphin on top, Calumet second, and Stone Street in third. I expect Godolphin to sweep those two categories. I think that's a place where I'll be very similar to my fellow Eclipse voters in that way. Jockey was tough this year because I thought about a lot of different options, and I think it's natural to go to IRAD with his numbers, just his pure numbers, and I do have him on top in the first spot. And then I think after that is where you can get a little bit more creative as far as who you think had the best year. I happen to think who had the best year as far as quality, not just quantity plus quality, was Flavien Prat. So I have him second. Excuse me, I have him third, actually, believe it or not. And I think just for quality, his graded stakes wins, etc. It's tinged a little bit by running in smaller fields in California and some of those horses, but with as much time as he's spending away from California in major parts of the year, I think that he's having just an incredible time. And the fact that the guy runs just as well in LA as he does in New York is pretty remarkable, and I think he's deserving of that. But I put Javier Castellano in the second spot, riding Mage and then riding Arcangelo. That's a guy who had a great year, won yet another Traverse, etc. So I think just for what Javier Castellano accomplished with the 3-year-olds, very impressive. I put him in the second spot. Like I said, Flavien Prat, just a great year. That leaves off great years for guys like Junior Alvarado. Florent Giroux has just had a terrific year. Tyler Gefalion had another unbelievable year, at least mostly on the Kentucky circuit, and just a great year. Juan Hernandez out west, just become an absolute stunner of a great jockey at both Santa Anita and at Del Mar, and just one that, isn't on my ballot, but I love. Louis Saez is another one of these guys, came back from the injury really well. Not easy to do. So that was an impressive thing that we had this year. John Velasquez, I left off. I mean, just a really, right now, the top of the sport, 10, 12, 15 jockeys, just really, really good. There's a great jockey essentially on every major circuit, which is really fun. And so that was a little bit more difficult. I have Axel Concepcion as my apprentice jockey. And now to train. And this one was a little bit different because it would be easy to go by numbers. And if you went by earnings, for example, you would just put Brad Cox on top. I put Brad in second place. And I think he had an incredible year. Again, just a terrific set of races and graded spots. 902 starters coming into when they sent us this. Probably 930 by the end of the year. Different tracks, different surfaces, different circuits, etc. The guy's just wildly consistent, man. I mean, just really is. And I put him in second. I thought Bill Mott had a really great year too. Just a really, really great year and especially good Breeders' Cup. And so I put him in third. I thought that Bill Mott was definitely worth having on my ballot, and so I left him on there as well. But I have it first place Chad Brown. And it's mostly because if you look at the total number of starters he actually had, which is right at just below 900, is essentially where he ended up. His graded stakes, he had 12 grade 1 wins this year. He had just as many as Brad Cox. Total overall graded stakes, he had the most. And that's with fewer starters. So that's 9 more graded stakes than the next trainer. And if we're talking about the top of the sport, who's the very best, give me Chad Brown, the guy who won the most stakes this year. And it's worth remembering, too, his stakes percentage is incredibly high. And often he has multiple runners in the same race. So he's hurting his own percentage by running in a lot of the stakes races that he's in. So there you go. There's my different votes for Eclipse Awards. Didn't want to spend too much time on that, Zach, but about 15 minutes.
Listen, you know, the one thing, and I know I haven't talked to let you do your Eclipse Award thing. The one thing I can say about Chad Brown is the man can pick races.
No, that's right.
He knows how to place his horses in the right spot.
Yep. And he also, too, and I don't, it's not a, by the way, I'm not saying like, oh, he has a rabbit out there. The horse, no.
Right.
He's great at placing horses who have different running styles in the same race, right? So, like in Italian stands out. She's in the, she's going to go to the front in her races, and then he'll have, a white beam or something like that. I'm just naming 2 horses that is chasing her. And if in Italian gets there first, great. If white beam catches her, great. He does, it's not going to lose sleep. But yeah, he's as good at that as anybody that I can think of. And especially on the East Coast, him and Pletcher. I mean, they just, and Bill Mott this year, man, Bill Mott's just been unbelievable. The guy's just awesome. So I feel good about my top 3. I don't think I'll be right. I think there's a good chance. Speaking of which, by the way, friend, been on this show. So it's not that. I think Jenna Antonucci is going to get a ton of votes because she's the first female trainer to win the Triple Crown race.
I certainly hope so. Like, mark that in history, for real.
That's right. But I just body work wasn't Eclipse worthy to me, but I understand the moment. I hope, like the NTRA has the moment of the year or what have you. I hope that people will look at her, go back and watch the Belmont. It's as good as a video as we've had in horse racing in a long while. So there are my Eclipse votes for 2023. Please don't take them away, National Turf Riders and broadcasters. All right, so let's talk about it. 3 different spots. We're going to New York, Kentucky, and California this weekend to look at races for 3-year-olds. Let's start with the one that actually has attached Derby points, and then I'll make a case that both the San Vicente Grade 2 out at Santa Anita and the preview at Turfway Park are both actually Derby preps as well. And you may be thinking, well, Louie, they don't have any points attached to them. And when I told a friend of the show, John Sherber, that I would be talking about the San Vicente as a Derby prep, he scoffed at it text-wise, as much as you can scoff in a text. He scoffed at it, and I decided I'll make my case later. But the Jerome Stakes has only been on the dirt for a couple of years. But it's at a mile on the dirt, 1 turn there at Aqueduct. 3-year-olds in this race, 150K. It's a listed stakes. At one point, this was a Zach of all things. This was a grade 1 race on the turf. And it was in April. That. So we are now at Aqueduct instead of Belmont running this one. It is now considered a prep for the Kentucky Derby. You've got a big favorite in drum roll, please, out of that Brad Cox barn. Javier Castellano coming back up from Miami for the day will be aboard. This horse ran 3rd last out in the Remsen, gets back to a mile where he broke his maiden. Checking the weather for New York would be a big key for this weekend because over the muddy go, he was actually okay. He was okay. And we're looking at a really reasonable chance of rain at Aqueduct on Saturday. And but it will be probably after this race is run because they're running it earlier in the card. It's probably going to rain around 2:30, 3 o'clock, so they should have dry conditions. But it's also going to be colder than bleep. It's going to freeze overnight in Queens. We'll probably have temperatures right around 30, 35 for race time. How will he react? Well, good news. He ran in the cold in Remsen at Aqueduct before. It was just fine under Javier Castellano. Gets a little bit of time off here, about a month between races. Horse really does seem ready. This is second off the layoff for Brad Cox. Goes to 29% that way. Horse we talked about last week on this show, Zach. Sweet Sadi J.
Yes.
Won the heft won the first race on the road to the Preakness. They are going to run. I checked with Dan Illman. They're going to run this horse on Saturday. That is the plan. So a 7-day layoff. This horse is coming back. I don't want to hear about your prissy horses and their 3-month layoffs. I don't want to hear about it.
We're going back to the 1980s where everybody runs a week later.
Plum is like, what? Only 2 races in a week? Sweet Saudi J is going to run with Dylan Davis. Ran under Barbosa last time in the heft. Won the heft by 6 lengths. A reminder, this is just a furlong longer there at Aqueduct going 1 turn. It's 3 for 8 this month. So I don't know what to do with Sweet Saudi J. I'm not going to lie. But to be fair, trainer Ray Gittner has done this 13 times in the last year, and he's won 4 of those races. So if anyone's going to turn a horse around this quickly, it's going to be him. The other major favorite here is El Grande O. The 4-horse here, Kendrick Carmouche and Linda Rice. Linda Rice set the record for trainer wins in New York last year in 2023, and that's another woman. So I've had a couple of women in New York kicking ass this year. Her and, of course, Jenna Antonucci. Kendrick comes in on this horse 9-5, 1-1 even money, by the way, on the 1 horse here. In drum roll, please. El Grande O coming in. Be the 9th start already, lifetime for this horse. Alongside Sweet Saudi J, they'll both have 9 starts in this one. Has run in all kinds of conditions. Ran in that Champagne at a mile. Didn't love the conditions. Finished behind Timberlake, of course, and then ran in the Sleepy Hollow and won in muddy conditions, interestingly, in a state-bred race coming back. Interesting to see this horse step out of the state ranks and run against a horse at Drumroll Please. It's actually a Pennsylvania bred, but a son of Hard Spun. I do think Drumroll Please gets it done here, but I'm fascinated by some of the other runners in here, like Regalo's coming up for Brittany Russell, who, by the way, another female trainer, just won the training title in Maryland this year. 2 first place finishes, last 2 out, maiden special, and then an optional claimer at Laurel Park. The first one going 7 furlongs. Then they tried it over 2 turns. A horse didn't seem to mind it at all. Saw the Maximus Mischief, obviously, in that Into Mischief line as a Kentucky bred there. And so interested to see if that horse likes the mile at Aqueduct, if it likes the surface. Time will tell. That's a tough one to predict if horses will like those deeper surfaces on Long Island. All right, so let's go out west before we head back to Kentucky. The Grade 2 San Vicente. And so, Louie, how dare you call this a Preakness prep? How dare you call this one? It is also a Preakness
Louie,
prep.
how dare you call this a Derby prep?
How dare you call this Kentucky Derby prep? Fair listener, let me tell you that. Since 2016, which horses have won this race, and what have they gone on to do? Fantastic question, loyal listener. In 2016, Nyquist won this race. I don't need to tell you about Nyquist. In 2020, a horse named Nadal won this race, and it was right before the world fell apart. Okay, that horse came back and won the Rebel and won the Arkansas Derby. Zach, do you happen to remember on what date we ran the Arkansas Derby in 2020?
Oh,
we ran the Arkansas Derby on the first Saturday in May. Hey, Zach, what race is usually on the first Saturday in May?
I'm going to guess the Kentucky Derby.
That's a good guess. This horse won the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby. The Arkansas Derby on the traditional Derby date that year. So, look, the horse never ran again after that Arkansas Derby. I'm not going to hold that against the San Vicente.
Yep.
So I'm going to say that was the Derby for 2020. That was a Derby prep. Concert Tour won this race in 2021. Also won the Rebel and then ended up running in the Preakness. So to me, we do these Road to the Preakness shows, right? Where we talk about the progression of distance, and they just ran that Heft Stakes, which I just mentioned, at 7 furlongs, right? So we're doing that here leading into the races next month at Santa Anita when we get into those more developed races, the longer races, getting ready that actually have attached Derby points. And I'm gagging for the name of that race. I'm going to look it up real quick. But, it is – to me, just because of the history and what horses have come out of it,
right?
I think it is. I think it acts like a prep for a Derby prep. It's a hockey assist, if you will. It's not the last pass, but it's the second last pass. And
second last pass.
Yeah,
crossing the blue line.
It's the pass before the pass. That's exactly right.
Yep, exactly.
And it's the Robert B. Lewis. Excuse me. They'll run that out at Santa Anita, and if memory serves. That's at 1.16 miles. But, essentially, because my sense is because they give the points to the Losal Derby or Futurity, excuse me. They don't want to turn around and give it to the San Vicente as well.
Exactly.
I'm here to tell Churchill Downs, do both. The 10-point races mean nothing anyway. All right, so we'll get it as far as the final numbers. Interesting field of 6 here, and I say interesting because 3 of the horses are coming off the turf. And really what it shows me, Zach, is, and I need to remind myself whenever I look at these races in Santa Anita, the surface change, dirt to turf, and vice versa, is much more common in California, especially in Southern California, than it is almost anywhere in the country, right? And the only other thing we see is like at a Golden Gate that has synthetic and turf, you'll see the horses go back and forth between those because we think of those as adjacent type courses, right? Where if the horse is good on the turf, they'll be comfortable on the synthetic, vice versa. Not always true, but usually true. And so I always have to remind myself of that. But for example, like Sliders in this race, who just ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint and at Santa Anita and finished 9th, but only by 3 lengths, right? Under Hector Berrios. They're giving them out to Joel Rosario for John Sadler. Coming back to dirt, man, he hits at 24% going turf to dirt. So is this the kind of horse that beats Baffert on Saturday? That's really where my brain is at right now. Is trying to figure out what it is that it's going to take to beat either Muth or Pilot Commander when we do get to Saturday. Now, the issue for these other horses, I think, is the following. Muth showed in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile that he belongs, right? Fierceness just had the day of his life.
That's right.
He won the American Pharaoh before that. Before that, he ran in the Best Pal and was up the track a little bit behind Prince of Monaco. Prince of Monaco's not in this field. And if you went purely on speed figures, I think that you would land on Muth and not even have a question. If you go to the history of this race, you would also land on Bob Baffert. Man, I'm interested in Pilot Commander here, coming out of Del Mar, coming out of winning. I first asking over 6 furlongs, excuse me. This is Son of Justified. We just watched in my balloting, for example, the top 2 fillies and 2-year-olds were both Justifies, right? And so this horse actually breaks his maiden over dirt, does by a couple of lengths. Juan Hernandez was aboard, so they're going to put Flavien Prat in the irons here. Horse has been working great at Santa Anita. Is totally ready for this. Not that Muth hasn't. Muth looks great too. Don't worry about it. But man, is there a chance the Pilot Commander picks him off? Yeah, that's exactly right. Then he got some other horses in here that I don't know what to do with. Voltage is in here, for example, coming out of the Zuma Beach, up the track, ran in that Del Mar, juvenile turf. That was back in September. That's at the grade 3 level, finishes 3rd there under Ramon Vasquez. Ramon's obviously not in Southern California right now. He's in Hot Springs, where you just were, running at Oaklawn. I don't, if I'm looking around trying to find another winner that isn't there, it might be Slider. It might be the horse coming out of a 5-furlong sprint that is going to be the fastest out of the gate if that horse can get ahead of Muth. And can they tire Muth out, essentially? And I just don't know.
Right.
Now, the issue is we're seeing Good Magics run like crazy, too. So I'll be staying away from the San Vicente, won't lie, because my sense is if I do feel like there's an upset brewing here, that Muth is going to run away with it. And so
happens every time.
Maybe by Saturday I'll talk myself into something else. I am fascinated by Pilot Commander. That's not justified. If Flavien gets the right trip, that's the kind of horse that, good break, all those things. The Baffert horses coming off of a win are very, very good. Interested to see that one. But if I was going to go against Muth, in order, I would use the 4 Pilot Commander and the 2 Slider. Really fascinated by Slider. Slider can get the 7 furlongs and not just be a 5, 5.5, 6 type turf sprinter there out west. By the way, I think a cool thing about this race, a couple of things. So Baffert, of course, has won the most of these. He's won 11. Okay. Bill Shoemaker, the jockey, won this race 8 times. Bill Shoemaker I love this kind of stat. Bill Shoemaker was put into the Hall of Fame in the 50s, and he won the 1986 Kentucky Derby.
Yes, I know.
What a badass. That kind of stuff is awesome. So, Bill Shoemaker, just an absolute baller. There's great pictures of him in a tux with a bunch of Playboy models, like just how, like horse racing back in the day, man.
Of course there is.
Of course, yes. Just the absolute best. All right, so let's go back to Kentucky. And you're wondering, hey, Louie, why are you including the Turfway preview stakes, which is just for 3-year-olds as a Kentucky Derby prep? Very similar reasons as we did out at Santa Anita. This will preview, literally, getting ready for the Battaglia. Now, the road to the Kentucky Derby through Turfway Park we used to laugh at. And and then Rich Strike happened. But I think more important,
2 years ago, man.
not, and I actually mean this, more importantly, as far as how we look, as we try to figure out, like, we do the road to the Preakness. One of the running jokes on this show, if you want to know who's not going to win the Preakness, pick the Tessio winner, right? Like, it's just, you can
Every
do that
time. Yep.
every time. Man, the Jeff Ruby Stakes is not, it's not that anymore. Two Phils came out of this race last year, and he was every bit good enough to win the Kentucky Derby last year. Mage just
on fire
by the end, right? Finish a second in the Derby. That's legit, man. And we get a winner in Rich Strike, which you can call it whatever you want. I know it's fluky now. Looking back, it's fluky now. Two Phils, though, showed coming off this surface, though, for the Kentucky Derby at least, it is not a hindrance. And so Turfway Preview leads into a race called the Battaglia Memorial. That used to be run as a sprint as well, but they have stretched that race out there at least, might be a mile and a 16th this year. I'll have to look that up. But they'll run the Battaglia in March at Turfway, and this is essentially the preview for that. The Battaglia, it runs at a mile and a 16th, like I thought. Okay, there you go. So they stretch that race out to an appropriate distance, and then, of course, they'll move it back a half a furlong for the Jeff Ruby Stakes at the end of that month. Vote No is in here, the one horse. He's going to be the favorite, and I think he's a deserved favorite. Finished second in the Grade 2 Bourbon last out in October, so a bit of a layoff here, but Billy Morey does that as well as anybody. Goes turf to synth at a terrible 42%, and so he's only hitting at 5 of his last 12. Like I said, Sweet Saudi J is listed for this race in the 2-hole here. He's actually going to run at Aqueduct if my guy Dan Illman is correct. Joe Shiesty's in here, which is just a great name for anything. That horse broke its name last out. Son of Air Force Blue, of all things. Homebred for Rodney Orr, is now owned by the Reynolds family, and soon to be the Foster family. And comes in at 2-1 for Alex Achard, who is a Grade 1 winning jock. Rides enough at Turfway to know the place, but last time out was aboard this horse who won by 12 lengths in a maiden win. Can the horse repeat that, running 21, 44, 56, and 110? We shall find out. But that horse was running against very bad competition in that race. And I think getting that horse to run that kind of race again, when that one very clearly came out of nowhere, I'm just not sure. That might be one that I try to play against. Let's go Marcus on the outside here. And this horse is interesting because it was running in other company at Keeneland as a 2-year-old. It ran 8 times total. This is the first time, obviously, running as a 3-year-old this early in the year. 8 times last year. Did win 3 times, including its last race. 3 back, ran 6.5 at Churchill in a 50 claimer, won it. Ran back in an allowance going 2 turns, didn't like it, frankly, behind Mena and Tizzy Indy, in that race. I was out there for that day in November. And then comes to the synthetic surface at Turfway and seems to really like it. So let's go Mark on the outside. A Son of American Freedom might be an interesting play here for the gelding at 5-1 for Adam Beschizza, who's actually starting to round into form, got back over 10% for last year, won 50 races. Interesting to see if that horse has what it takes. You want a long shot in here, Zach? Huh? Want a long shot?
Always. Louis' long shot.
I got you, Joe Shiesty, right here. Let's look at CPG. That's the 6th horse, Luan Machado.
Yep.
Horse is coming out of trying Oaklawn Park. Didn't like it before that. Ran and broke his maiden over Firm Go at Churchill Downs. Okay. What's that? Firm Go at Churchill Downs. Yeah, that was in September when they still had a turf course. How about that? Okay. No speed rating for that day. They weren't. There was an issue with all those, but did run the 5 furlongs in 58 and change. That's fast. That's fast.
That's pretty good.
Goes down to Oaklawn. Goes down to Oaklawn. Essentially stretches his legs because is a Ronmo catch rating. Did not like it. Comes back. Luan Machado, by the way, won the riding title at Turfway in the fall. I'm going to roll with CPG in this race. The 6 horse, 12-1 Louis Longshot in this race. We'll see if he can get some of that speed back that he had at Churchill Downs and translate it to the Turfway preview on the synthetic. Whew. Well, how about that, Zach? We got through it. How about that?
We did.
So that's 39 minutes of me talking, and how did I open this show? What was the terrible, stupid thing that I said? I'm at Racing Louie on Twitter. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm at Radio Louie. I do more radio than I do racing. So, yeah. Not
Do you
jockey
though,
rating.
Louie? Do you?
Well, there you
Well,
go. You
we
can always check
survived
me out
what?
if you.
7 Mikeless episodes now? 8? I love you,
talked to
Mike.
on Wednesday. So I talked to Mike yesterday. No,
Yep.
today. And he said he listened to my interview with Steve Kornacki. Do we believe him?
I believe
I'm going to say
that
yes
he will
because
listen
I
to it.
used it. I think he used it to verify or go against some of his own Eclipse votes.
Yes.
I think that's what he did.
I will say that I was in Kentucky and Mike refused to come see me.
And
he was putting that down for the record.
And he was in Austin and refused to go see you.
Yes. So my love for Mike is waning at this point. We'll see if it comes back.
A heavy wane here.
Oh, Louie.
Right. Well, let's pay the tab. We'll get out of here. I'm back at it tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock here on ESPN Louisville. I'm on 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, Eastern time here with our affiliate here. You can just ask your smart speaker to play ESPN 680, and you will get me every weekday, Monday through Friday. Obviously, lots of local talk, but we do horses pretty darn often. Yep. We will do that tomorrow. I'm
also check out our other podcast.
Yeah, I do have another one. It's called 40 Minutes of Pod in honor of Nolan Richardson. It's obviously about college basketball that releases every Tuesday. And then you can check this one out every Thursday. I'm glad we started that college basketball one because I wasn't doing enough media. So this is it's a really nice outlet to do extra show. It's really great. My wife loves it, all those things. So yeah, it's good. All right. Well, I am Louie Rabeau. He's producer Zach. We're going to get out of here. We're going to pay the tab, as Mike would say. This has been a Thursday Eclipse Votes edition and fake Derby Prep edition of the Horse Racing Happy Hour.